First of all, last time we were to get together, honest to God, I'm up on Camino and I couldn't get out of my driveway. I had two trees down that had to be cut up and then getting out of the snow. So sorry for that, but that was what was happening up there. And I guess down here it was a totally different world. Um, so sometimes it looks that way. The original plan for that meeting the other day was buyers in today's market. It's a big deal to me because it's so different. If you've been in this market, working in this industry for a number of years, it's really unusual to have such a tough market for our buyers. I can well remember when our buyers were king and our poor sellers. There were products on the market from our sellers and they were struggling. I think I told you my first goals in the industry, a house could be on the market for 6 to 9 months and that wasn't a big deal. And now it's within hours. So it's just a really different look. So I think there's a lot we need to do with our buyers to prepare them for what this market looks like. You know what? We also have some really good tools. So I'm going to jump in with some of my notes that I've been making on this. The most important, I think, is starting off with that letter of pre-approval. So do each of you have somebody you already like to work with, whether it's Jody or somebody else that you like to work with as a lender? Yep. Yes?
We do, yes.
Okay. If that person is helping you with getting your buyer's letter of pre-qualification, that can make a big difference. It's not just the letter up front that says what they're qualified to do, but it does a couple other things. It sets that purchase price so that the buyer is educated to where their boundaries are, and so are you. And that the properties that you're now showing, we used to be able to show a range. We used to go over buyer rates, purchase price rates. But now, because our properties, we can't underbid really competitively. Now I don't really tend to use that as a tool. I tend to try and stay within what their boundaries are, so that I'm not disappointing them more. But it sets a purchase price and it sets up what the financing is. So if it's at 20%, if it's 15, if it's 10, if it's 5. On conventional, if it's FHA, if it's VA, you have to know all that, because when you go and find the house, if you're going to write the offer, you're going to write the offer within a couple of days. Usually it just depends on when the review date is. So sometimes you can force a date. Like if you know you've got a strong enough buyer, maybe you write the offer now and you write enough, you're able to write enough of a compelling offer that you ask the seller, the listing broker, to accept the offer prior to the closing review date. Some of them will do that. Most of the time, as representatives of our buyers, I see us waiting for the very last day because we don't want to set the price and then have that broker be telling other buyer brokers, oh yeah, we already have an offer in this range, like the meet it or beat it type. So that letter of pre-qualification can do your price range. It can help you understand what kind of financing you're dealing with for your buyer. It can speed up closing. If the lender that you're working with is already pushing it through, expecting you to be successful, they'll push it right through the underwriter's office. And I've actually had closings within 2 weeks. Particularly if you have a vacant property that you're putting an offer on, that can be very useful because now your offer looks a lot more like a cash offer. That's one of the avenues. It takes that partnership with your lender and getting the paperwork through on that. And it also is offering a security for the seller. The lender I prefer to work with always calls. I send them the information about the listing. They always call the listing broker and say, hey, I'm representing blah, 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 and they're really a strong buyer. If you have any questions, ask us. If you need anything, ask us, that kind of thing. So when you have that backup, it does often set you apart from, and set your buyer apart from the rest of the competition. Those are kind of basics. We listened to, I think it was Carrie. I thought she had a great suggestion. Carrie Landis with us with, is it, Brenda, what company is Carrie with? Do you remember?
Fidelity.
Fidelity. And one of her suggestions with keeping the buyers interested was because it's such a high stress event. She said, well, you know, take them out to a nice dinner. I said, that's a lot. How about just give them a 6-pack or something? But the idea of breaking up the stress with a gift certificate for something or helping them to kind of recharge, I thought that was a good suggestion, because maybe like yourselves, I'm dealing with several buyers who are after it and after it and after it. And sometimes they do need to take a break. I don't want them to take a break for months. Take a break for a night out and then let's get back to it, that kind of thing. So if you're dealing with buyers that are getting weary, try that kind of strategy as well. The letter of pre-approval, I spoke to that. The other thing I do that's different now is when I have a listing that, not my listing, but when I have a buyer who's looking at someone else's listing, I always go do a CMA on it, because I need the buyer as much as myself to understand, okay, what is this market saying that the home price should be valued at? Not just what they're asking for, but what the sales have indicated in that local area. So the CMA has been a useful tool, because sometimes if I have a newer buyer who hasn't been after this for very long, they still want a wheel and deal. They still think they're negotiating. They're kind of not negotiating. Really, your seller is pretty much king right now. So to show them what's happening in the market, a CMA is a really good tool. In the MLS, a fast, easy CMA it's quick to do, it's easy to do. And I think that's a good education tool. I don't know if anybody uses anything different.
We also have, we pay for the brokers to use Toolkit.
Is anybody using that?
Yeah, I have used it. I usually find myself using the one that's in the MLS, because it's right there in front of you, and it's you've already got the information kind of fed into it, and it works.
Yeah, okay. I need to go back and look at that. I think I've only occasionally looked at toolkits, but I can't even remember now. So
Yeah, call Chris, don't call me. I don't know anything about it.
okay. And then the other is identification of the buyer priority needs. I don't know about you guys, but so many times I've had a buyer tell me what's their priority. And I'm listening. I'm trying to understand what's important to you. What are your priorities, not mine? Oh my God, I can't believe it when they go totally opposite of everything they said they wanted, and they wind up buying something completely different. And I'm thinking now, wait a second, how did I miss that? I noticed tonight in the in our own champion site, there's a checklist there that might be worth taking a look at. It's right there in our site under oh, what do they call it? Like
I'm gonna try to look it up
checklists or
myself.
forms. I think it's forms and things like that for the company.
You mean
But
the
it's
company
actually a
site?
home buyer wish list. I'm sorry, Frank, you were saying?
Is it in the Champions website where you upload your transactions and all of that stuff, that list?
No, it's in the same kind of
Yes.
agenda format. It's not where you upload the transaction, but it's on that listing bar on the
On that big-
left-hand side. But it's
yeah.
just like forms and pamphlets. for
Yeah,
the
it says
Champions office.
office forms, and when you click on it, there's a ton of stuff. Client form CMA, blah, 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 blah.
But the one that I noticed for buyers is there's a home buyer wish list. And I thought that was interesting because that's an easy conversation. You're not, as I mentioned to Brenda, you're not looking at a blank page. Now you're looking at something where they can organize their thoughts and say, oh yeah, what about this? What about that? And it should give you a better concept of what you want to be looking for your buyers. And honestly, you guys, this has been such a different time for me anyway. My buyers are contacting me saying, I'll get a text saying, what about this property? Get me more information on this property.
Yeah.
I used to feel like I was aggressive getting out there, giving them the information. Are you guys finding the same thing?
Well, we do because we try to keep them, or I do, I try to keep them on the MLS site that I feed them. So I take their criteria and do a search and let it run and let them get an email 2 or 3 times a week or every day. I don't even care.
Yeah.
And I get the same email so I can kind of see it. I can then go in and see how often they've looked at it. So I kind of can see what they're doing, but all of that I do, they finally kind of follow that because it's kind of in their face every day. But they're going to go to the Zillow site and the Redfin sites and find all these houses. And I try to explain to them that, we haven't, those may or may not meet the criteria. So immediately they send me one. Well, what about this one? It looks just right.
Yeah.
Well, okay, you said you wanted at least 1,200 square feet and that one's got 900. So it's easy to miss that. And that's why we search for a little larger homes, because then you can waste your time and go show them that 900 square foot house.
Yeah.
But if they're truthful at all with themselves, they'll say, yeah, we love that house, but it's just too small. Well, we kind of knew that. And
Yeah, from the descriptor. But the other thing I noticed, and again, I'm only repeating my experience, so yours may be different. My buyers are really independently looking. So they're pulling the ones that they want to look at, and they're looking at it before they call me and say they're doing drive-bys before they want me to walk them through. I've already told them, you guys, if I'm going to be your real estate broker, I'm going to walk you through that listing. So if you want to view it, call me, I'll be there, we'll walk through it. And why is that important?
because something right up the deal, right in front of you.
Yeah. So, and I never want to be in that scenario. So we have a form that it's not that old. It's not that new. It's not that old. That 41A buyer agency. Does anybody use that? Is anybody using that?
Is that the one that identifies that you're their agent and all
Yeah.
that 4 lines
Yeah.
on it? I use it every time.
So I used to not use it until I lost a couple buyers who walked into some scenarios and decided, oh, I'll make a better deal if I go with the listing broker. But when I sit down and visit with the buyers now, I automatically have them do that. And I prefer it over just signing a 42. We always want to introduce our laws of real estate agency and talk about that with our buyers and our sellers, but at least with our buyers. But I always bring out that 41A and have them sign up to say, hey, this is how I work. See how you're comfortable with it. This is what we're going to do and how we get through this process. But they really do need the explanation because you're not new to it, but they are. So oftentimes, even something like, how do I get paid? They don't know. They're
Right.
sitting there kind of wondering, how am I supposed to ask that question of when I'm going to pay for it? That's another thing. I've got some resources that also tells exactly what the buyer pays for, both at closing and throughout the process. So I'm going to just say we have a home buyer's guide. Oh, there you go. And you know who puts these out? The title companies. So they're all free, but they're useful. A buyer's resource guide. This one is from Rainier. Whoever you're using, whoever you like to work with, they have these resources. And it's nice to just hand them to your buyers and start a conversation. Because at least initially, the more educated they are to the process, the more comfortable they'll be. Let me see. The negotiating term. So I'm going to jump from, we now say we understand what the priority is for these buyers, and they've gone and they've done their driving around for the community so they feel like they're comfortable with whatever this house is that they're interested in. I always make an appointment, but when I make an appointment, I always talk to the listing broker as well as do the same CMA and get all the information I can on the property. I forward the selling document, the Form 17, and anything that the broker, listing broker has identified with that listing. So I make sure that the buyer has access to that. So when we go into it, most of the time, the buyers are pretty savvy about what that property is about. You already know sometimes it's deceptive. You start the walkthrough and you go, oh my gosh. But other times it's pretty nicely done. These days, since we're writing up offers so quickly, it's really important to understand what your buyer's capabilities are, as well as what that property seller is going to need. So if it's vacant, in your purchase and sale agreement, it's likely you're going to want to write a closing date that's highly competitive. Ask the listing broker, do they want to hurry up and get it sold? If they do, ask your lender, what's the quickest close we can get on this? How quickly can we get the appraisal out on this? If we get the offer. Now what you're trying to do is take your financing client and move him so he's competitive even with the cash offers. Cash offers are tough to beat because they don't require some of the things that we have to do. You know about the waiving that inspection, the 35W. That's tough. So you have to talk to your buyers to say, you guys, understand if you waive that inspection, you may discover something about the property that we couldn't know just from a walkthrough. So try to be an advocate for your buyers still, because it puts you in kind of a tough spot. If they're going to waive the, one time I had someone waive a paragraph W on the Form 21. Anybody know what that is? Yeah, neither did I. I was thinking, which is that one? So if you read it, it allows your buyer 10 days to discover information about the property. And if they don't like what they discovered in 10 days, they can walk away and collect the earnest money. So take a look at Form 21, paragraph W. It's interesting. If somebody waives that, what they're telling the seller is, we know we're going to do this. We're waiving the inspection. We're waiving everything that we can waive. Just give it to us. What else? The 21 was interesting for that. In almost every part of your 21, you're negotiating. You're negotiating even with the items that are included, not just that purchase price or earnest money. But if you put an earnest money down, make sure your buyer understands the difference. I watched the confusion of understanding the difference between earnest money and the down payment. And understanding that their earnest money is actually going to be a credit on their statement, closing statement. So some of the things that you deal with all the time that it's clear to you might not be clear to your buyer. So go ahead and have those conversations, and then you wind up having it more than once. Title insurance and closing agent. We used to split that. The listing broker took title, the closing agent was usually selected by the buyer. But now I notice in our transactions, if the listing broker has identified somebody, that's who we're going with. We're doing everything we can to accommodate that listing broker so that we have the influence of this contract. The closing date and possession date. On the closing date, again, I pay attention if the property's vacant, because then it's usually how much can I step it up? But has anybody been dealing with a rent back on closing date? Janice, what's your experience on that one? I'm sorry, Janice, I was asking what your experience was on that.
Yeah, I know, I was trying to unmute myself. I haven't had the experience myself, but I know since Katrina's mentoring me, she had that recently on a one that she sold up in Cedar Woolley. And it went, it was $675, I think, and it went for like $853 for all cash or something, but she didn't even take the all cash because the terms on the other offer were better because of the rent back she needed. So it was just a learning about, it's maybe the cash isn't always the right deal for the person depending on what they're needing, right? If they need to stay in it because their house in Massachusetts isn't going to be ready for a week or a month or whatever. So I thought that was interesting, even though she had 14 offers, I think, 10 maybe. And even the highest best bid didn't win it. So yeah.
So that tells you that sometimes those terms that you're trying to negotiate with can make a difference. And one of the things when I've got a rent back scenario, I say to the buyer, listen, if you can't get into it for that first month, which they're not paying in the first month anyway, essentially, they're not doing a duplicate pay. If you can allow your seller to stay in the home and you're not requiring them to pay, that becomes a pretty good tool for them, because the convenience and the financial less stress can mean a lot more than an extra XYZ thousands, especially if they've only paid 200,000 on this property and they're making another 600,000. The money means something different to them now. So it becomes more like the convenience overtakes. So think about on your rent back scenarios, instead of trying to look at it like, let's make some money, I'm going to say that in this competitive market, it might be a really useful tool on a rent back form to say, this might be a way to waive some stress for the seller and see if that's going to be a way to achieve that offer. So closing date and possession dates, that can take, that can be an opportunity for some serious negotiation. The rest of it, I know you are familiar with the services of the closing agent for payment of utilities, charges levied before but due after closing, and identifying all the addenda. What I did was I went back when I got so surprised, that's paragraph W on the form 21. I went back through a number of the forms that we use all the time, because I thought, gosh, is that a new paragraph? Or have I just been missing And honestly, you read back through these and then finally you're putting a lot of little yellow highlights on things. So I'm gonna suggest, even no matter how familiar you think you are with these forms, take the occasion to go back through them and look at them, and if there's anything in there that you need a refresher on. On the financing addendum, it's been my experience that negotiating the price and then identifying it, whether it's conventional, FHA, VA, that's been interesting because it feels like, it doesn't mean I'm right, it feels like, yeah, cash usually wins out, but a strong conventional offer seems awfully solid. And then, unless I'm on Whidbey Island, my VA offers or FHA offers, they're not getting as much play. So again, I'm gonna ask you guys, are you feeling the same scenario, or is that just unique to whatever I've come across?
Well, I think one of the things I've run into with an FHA buyer, because a lot of people go FHA, but there's a lot of, you can get almost the same down payment through a conventional, at least at 5%, sometimes less. And people who are having a lot of trouble qualifying almost have to go to FHA. It's about the only way they can do it. And a lot of the buyers, I won't say sellers, I mean, figure that out. And they usually figure it out through their broker who tells them that. And so he's going to encourage them a lot of times, he or she, that if everything's the same, maybe you should take this 5% conventional offer over this FHA offer, because there's a good chance that's a stronger buyer. Nobody knows that for sure, but it could be true. So,
and I'm also thinking another impact is that the FHA requirements for when they're doing their appraisal and assessment on the property, the FHA requirements are different than conventional. So usually FHA and VA, their guidelines are more stringent.
right.
So if it's a property that may be a little borderline or have some improvements that would be required, then if my buyer is qualifying FHA or VA, sometimes I just say, look and see what happens if we go conventional, if this is the right property. Because that could be the trick that moves that one for them. So a lot of it is understanding what your lender can do for you and your buyer on these different pieces of property. Maybe it's a really clean property and it won't matter. If it's a clean, well-done property, we don't have to worry about FHA, VA requirements. Maybe it won't matter. So it's not just, it is interesting. It's not just buyer themselves. It's also the property and the seller trying to figure out how they'll get through the process easier. On your financing form, it also addresses the appraisal. So this is, I mean, honest to God, I don't ever remember in 15 years prior where we've had to deal with the prices, the difference in appraisal prices. And now we really do. And we have to consider whether or not our buyers are in a position to be able to offer any kind of money towards a difference in an appraisal assessment. Some of the communities, especially in the outlying areas, and you guys, I'm in an outlying area. I'm not in Seattle proper. So what I see might be a little bit different competitively than what you're working with. But some of these outlying areas, we have never seen prices skyrocket the way they have just recently. So that scares a seller thinking, whoa, I love getting the money, but I don't know if it'll praise out. So what if? Any of you use that appraisal waiver. I'm gonna call it a waiver. It's a 22, I think, AD.
That 22 AD for the,
Yeah.
for low
That-
appraisal.
Anybody have any fun with that?
Yeah, I've had to use that a lot of times, or not a lot of times, but in the last few years, couple of years. And the competitive bids usually have something in there, maybe up to $20,000, $30,000. So what that really says is if the appraisal is short by, if the appraisal comes in $30,000 low, I'm going to go ahead and increase my down payment and buy that house anyway, realizing that my lender will only offer me the appraised value. And so that lets the house go ahead and close. But it puts the person upside down with his equity in the house by potentially the $30,000 that he put in there.
But
So
on the-
if you own the house for 20 years, you won't even notice it. But if
or 20 months
yeah,
in this market or
turn
less.
around and sell it right away, you will notice it.
So I'm going to say the other part of that is helping your buyer to understand you're not having to come up with the 25 or 30,000 cash. It may be just changing the percentage that you're going to put down, and you're allowing, as a difference, and then the difference in what that payment is. I have got a really good little chart that I'm going to send out when I do my little summary statement. I'm going to have some, attachments there that I think will be really useful to you. And I'm going to encourage you to look at that, because I know I suffered from not really understanding, well, how do we get that appraisal disparity to work for us? And then I was surprised, because I'm going through the numbers, that in some cases, it can even mean that they have, depending on what their credit score is, and debt ratio to income, it could even give them a better interest rate. So I'm going to forward that information for you, so you have the chart to look at and actually go through and see, oh my gosh, the difference in what they had to come up with was something like $1,500, not 25,000, but 1,500. So, which was very doable, because they changed the terms of their conventional financing from like a 10% to a 5%. They still had the money that they had set aside anyway. The other thing for our buyers is to make sure that we've got that whole list of programs that's available for them for the down payment assistance programs, that if they qualify for those, you want a meeting with the lenders that can help walk them through that process. I forgot to mention that up front, but we should have a whole list of those. I really expect my lender to work with the buyers and find them the best programs that suit what they need, especially depending on where they're planning on going and what their budgets are. So that helps me a lot. I don't want to be a mortgage broker. I want to be a real estate broker, but I want my mortgage broker working with my buyers, making sure they're set up to succeed. And then my job is to get that contract, reflect a strong buyer. I also think that it is really helpful when your lender will call that listing broker and say, hey, you guys, this guy's good for it. If this is the offer that you take, whatever you need from us, we're going to take care of it, make it happen. So those are some of the things that are important.
Eileen?
I'm sorry?
Sorry, it's Roxanne. Can I interrupt and run by a problem that's been on my mind that I've been waiting for this class to ask? I had experience recently. I had a young girl who was up here from California. She was in her 30s and away from her family, worked in a hospital for 2 years, really wanted to buy a home. So we talked with Jody. She qualified for 400. She likes Edmonds, but knew she couldn't be in Edmonds proper. We must have looked at 10 different places and made, I don't know how many different offers. We would go in and make an offer, and I think 400,000 nowadays is kind of chump change to, some of these investors. Every single offer that we made, we were beat out by a cash offer that was 60 to $80,000 over. She got frustrated. I was almost in tears. She ended up just moving, but there something happened back home in California. She said, forget it. It's too hard here. I'm just moving back to California. Lost customer. So how do how do you overcome that? Maybe you don't. One thing you did just mention is earnest money from the lender, that they have programs to help with their earnest money. She had, like $10,000 to $20,000 in earnest money. Didn't help us. The offers came in so much higher and they were always cash.
So probably it's not the earnest money that she had that money for. She had the down payment.
And she was
Right.
conventional. Yeah, she was conventional. 25,000 to put down. Her limit was 400,000, 400 on HOAs. We couldn't get her a thing.
That is, well, and you're looking in even the outlying areas of Edmonds, pretty tough unless you go to townhouse or condo style.
Well, that's what we were. We were at condos.
Uh,
And she did want a 2-bedroom condo. There were some out there for 300 that didn't have laundries and, were not as quite as, nice, but, they had community laundries and stuff. But
yeah. So, Roxanne, one of the things I do is I just say, look, this is your stepping stone. This is your first piece. Once you do this, you get to build the equity in this, and now you become the person that's got the cash equity. So give yourself a chance once you make that first investment. So even if she settled for a little bit less than what her ideal was, it's still huge for her, because it's, instead of spending her money paying somebody else's mortgage, she's now spending her money paying her mortgage and building equity in her own pocket.
yeah, we talked about that. She
Yeah.
did have pretty high standards, and she definitely wanted a 2-bedroom. We probably could have got her 1-bedroom, but you can't make them do what they don't want to do. So
Yeah. And honestly, the only thing I can tell you is I've had a couple walk as well. They got scared. They felt like the prices were just way too high for them. And then one day I decided to show them. I did a CMA for an area, and I showed them the same kinds of properties in this one area. And I said, okay, 4 months ago, here was the price, the sales, the actual sold prices in that area. 3 months ago, here's what it was. 2 months ago, and essentially, you guys, it was running like 20,000 a month.
yeah.
So my logic on it was just get in, do what you need to do, because your equity is going to grow like that. You're not going to gain the market. I don't see the market bringing the prices down. All the indicators, all the information is, unless we have to deal with World War III, then I don't know. But yeah, our interest rates are going to go up higher. Everything makes me feel like, come on, buyers, let's get it done. Because this still is one of the best ways for a person, I always say it this way, with a W-2 income to create wealth. So yeah, you're right.
Are people that have a lot of equity in their homes taking equity out and
And
buying
buying
second
another
homes
house, yeah. If
for
they
an
can qualify, yeah.
for an investment?
So that's where part of our investors are coming from. Because there is no money like the kind of money you're making on a home, the percentage of increase that we have on our home dollars
Right.
or equity positions, even in the stock market. The stock market has been awesome for a long time, but even that doesn't compare with where you have several $100,000 invested in a home that you get to live in and use. And then it also just continues to grow equity. So for my young buyers, it's a matter of getting them to understand, yeah, you don't get to have it all right now. You really don't. A lot of us worked a lot of years to be able to have what we have and where we are. But if they want it, they can do it. And it means, yeah, when the guys are going out drinking at the pub, you maybe say, nope, I don't want that dollar to go in my housing fund. I'm serious. Those are the conversations of what are you doing to make this happen for yourself? And that's part of that wish list when they write up their wish list. Okay, let's go look at what that really costs. That's the benefit of jumping on the MLS. When I've got somebody saying, I want waterfront for 400,000. Oh, let's go take a look at what that really looks like. Because you really do have people who think that's a possibility. That's not going to happen. And that's even for a bog. so honestly, Roxanne, I know I've had a couple of people that have just gotten afraid. They just feel the market is way too high. I don't know. I feel like buy, you're gaining. You're the one gaining.
And we were just always outbid, and it was cash offers, and it was sizable amounts over asking that, she couldn't even compete. So,
Yeah. So I took one buyer, who kept saying that they couldn't be out in this area and there's no way and it's too far. And I showed them on the map where drive time it was 5 minutes difference. And they were able to buy, you guys will kill me, but you guys, a 5-bedroom, 3 full bath. I want to say 2,300 square foot, brand new home, all new appliances, really nice yard, 650,000.
Where
Just
was
have to be
that?
able to travel.
Where was that at?
That's Stanwood. And they were looking, going, oh my God, I can't go any further than Arlington. And it's sure you can. Here's the map. Here's what it really looks like. And it's got a great school district too.
Yeah, she was up on Capitol Hill, but she liked Edmonds.
Yeah. And well, I love Edmonds, but you can't get into Edmonds for that kind of money. So it's kind of like go further out. If they go further out, they get the independence of having their own place, but the dollar value for what they get is much better.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just trying to move their scope a little bit further out. And you know what? I think I would have said, no, so what do you do if she's a waitress? Go get something closer. If she's an office worker, how many days do you go into the office and how many days are you staying home? No one's saying,
She was a nurse at Harborview.
oh, she's
Or
making
at
bank.
a Kaiser
Yeah.
Permanente.
And those guys can do a 3-4 day work schedule, longer days. but
Yeah, it
work
just didn't work for her.
travel.
It was the other bids were kind of the
But that's my
nail in the
point.
coffin.
You look at what that individual is dealing with, and then you find the options. And the encouragement of, well, maybe, like you said, maybe it wasn't right for her, but yeah, I always think that if you're willing to bend, if you can make some adjustments, you'll get there. But you're right, at 400, what you've got is your investors are trying to buy all that up. Your people that have the equities in their homes have become investors. So a lot of it is cash. And then you've got all the other first-time home buyers who maybe have some assistance programs helping them to get into the game. But our goal as brokers is to help our buyers see, okay, what are your options? What makes sense for you? How do we get you in there so you can start making, my attitude about property anyway is it should be an investment. So come in and start making the money, and you make the money just by owning it. So I don't know, Roxanne. Maybe she
Well, she was
wasn't ready
looking,
yet.
I agree with you. She could have ended up in Linwood or something probably, but she just wasn't interested in that. And she really, and again, I think that's part of her job is working with different personalities. She wanted a home, you know, she didn't want to move again in a year or whatever. She wanted to, you know, to be in one spot and wanted it to be what it was. And, you know, they were out there in her price, but the issue was they were always bought up by these investors with cash that offered 50 to 60 more.
That's
So
why
that
you do
was,
the CMA and you look at that and you say, hey, you think this is 4, but I'm telling you from the CMA, you know what things sold for in there. Here's what you can expect. So that's why either you look at the 1-bedroom or you look at the condo townhouse or you go further out. You're not stuck. You're really not stuck.
we were all condos. So
Yeah. And then the condos have their different association fees that they have to qualify for. Anyway, so I'm going to say that one of the tools that we have is dealing with the difference in that appraised value, an increased down payment, the escalation. Almost all of us, I think, have used that escalation addendum. Yes. Which just to make sure you know, they have to give you the complete competing offer, not just the Form 21 first page. They have to supply you the full offer so that you can look that over and make sure it is in fact a competing offer before you exercise your escalation clause. And then the other tool that's been used that we haven't used until just more recently is the waiver of that inspection. Yeah, let me see, I just pulled. Oh, and then I know I already talked about the buyer's agency. So a number of these forms have come up just because it's new. It's something we haven't had to deal with, like that waiver of the inspection. A number of the forms, it's almost cyclical, where other times where we've dealt with having to do escalation on our properties. The biggest tool you have is the flexibility of listening to what they want, the encouragement for gosh, you guys, it's a heck of a good investment. It's going to make you money. And here's the proof. Run the CMAs and show them the proof. And then I always say this, you don't get to win if you don't play. If you take the ball and go away, you're not going to win. So you have to stay in the game and look for the avenues that will help you be successful. And that's what I think our job is as brokers. We're looking for all the avenues to help them be successful, from how we structure the offer, which is all paperwork, how we help them think about that investment. So I'm going to encourage you, there are tools that we have at hand to help people see, oh my gosh, I need to see it as more than just, here's my 400,000 that I'm qualified for. But I want to invest myself into actually achieving that goal. Oh, anybody have anything that I should have talked about that I didn't on this, that you have found to be successful with your buyers?
I just have one comment for Roxanne, I think. I don't know what her action looked like, but I don't think it was her fault. She actually had a buyer that was qualified for 400,000, and she was interested in an area where houses are kind of starting at 600,000, and she really wasn't willing to move into the outskirts a little bit in order to find a $400,000 home. That was,
She was looking at condos and she wasn't looking in the Edmonds Bowl. We were looking up closer to Highway 99. So it was
Yeah.
still Edmonds. It was not the Bowl, and it was
right.
not.
I didn't mean Edmonds. I just mean where she wanted to be. The houses cost more money, and
Yeah.
so she didn't have much to look
Well,
at. And
we actually found quite a few condos for 400 and 335, 400. But again, one of them was 340 or 335. We bid 360. It came in at 410 for a 335 condo. And it's because they had cash.
But see, that's Frank's point, is it may have been listed that way, but the reality is it was going to sell for more. And you can do that by,
it's almost like maybe, I mean, I hate to say this because I don't know any of the background really, but if she was going to offer $400,000 on a $400,000 condo, she almost should have taken that $335,000 condo and escalated it all the way up to 400. And so she's kind of still in the running when somebody.
Do you think the appraisal would have come through? If it
Yeah.
listed at 335, you think it would have appraised at 400?
Yeah, I mean, you could do that, but I mean, if somebody offers cash, which sounds like maybe they did, you probably wouldn't have gotten it, but at least you would have had a much stronger run at a successful offer.
so
If she
you made
wanted-
me, I'm sorry, Frank. Makes me think of a couple things. One, I love the escalation, because, you know, it's easy to do woulda, shoulda, coulda on that, but you're only escalating by however much you're allowing, whether it's 15, 2,000 or 10,000 to the next level. And it can only beat whatever was the highest offer, right? So remember that. And I forgot to tell you guys, the other way I got a VA approval was because I increased what my escalation was from, usually I do 15 or 2,000. But I went to 10,000 because they really wanted the property, but it was an area, my guy was VA, and VA requires a little more from the seller. So to encourage him to take it, I did 10,000. We'll do an escalation by 10,000, pick us. So Frank's point is well taken in that, honestly, Roxanne, the other part of it is you guys, they get into it within months. They've made that equity position.
Right.
And you can even prove that by looking at what's happened in the market on CMAs.
Yeah, when I looked at the CMAs and the place was 335, that's the highest that I could find in that building and the surrounding buildings. So she qualified for 400. We could have made it for 400, but I guess I was afraid that it would not appraise at 400. Whereas the cash buyers come in with 410 or whatever, and they have it, knowing
That's true.
that it will be worth that much in a couple months.
Yeah,
So
that's true. What can you do if somebody comes in with that kind of money? True.
yeah.
But it's not always a guarantee that somebody's going to come in with that kind of cash.
And are they appraising that high?
Or even with the appraisal, the other deal on the appraisal is when you don't have guarantees on the appraisal, even when you feel like, oh yeah, it'll appraise out, and it comes in different. But that's why I want you to look at, when I send that attachment out tomorrow,
Mhm.
take a look at the attachment on the appraisal information.
Okay,
It's not the way you think. It's not as challenging as you think it is. And the outcome is not debilitating to your buyer. So,
Mhm.
so that's something I think can be really a much more useful tool than we've used in the past. That
Can
we
I-
haven't had to.
Can I say something? Okay, so I just had a situation happen to another broker, and the appraisal came in quite a bit lower, like hundreds of thousands.
wow,
And two things. One, the appraiser, he said that they're starting to appraise differently. So just be careful. But the other thing, the broker talked this buyer into doing a non-refundable earnest money of $50,000.
Ooh,
And the house was on the market for 7 something. It ended up selling for over 1.1 million.
wow.
And it did not come in to appraise. They don't have the money. So just be careful when you are working with these buyers. They're wanting to do anything to get that deal, but they may lose $50,000.
They
So
lost it.
yeah, so just be careful and be wise.
they actually did lose that 50?
What's
Was,
that?
are you saying that your broker did actually, on behalf of that buyer, they did actually lose the 50,000?
Yeah,
Wow.
it was non-refundable.
Hmm.
And they couldn't come up with the money to bring it up, and the sellers didn't want to go down.
Well, luckily I have a couple of others that are more like 700 to 800 coming up in a sale, which, if you have a sale, that's all good. So, but yeah, just this one, she was just such a nice girl and I really wanted to help her. She was a young girl, single, first time Seattle.
Yeah.
So it was kind of frustrating, all the cash buyers.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, anything else? Anybody have any other ideas for helping with our,
did I hear you say that the lenders have some kind of a earnest money thing that they can help with your earnest money?
so they have a program, in fact, a lot of them do. It's a difference. They can go to a 3% down on a conventional. So say your buyer was doing a 5%, but now they want to offer, say, 25,000 on the appraisal gap. And they can actually structure the loan to a 3%. That allows them to take the money, the difference of the money that they were putting on the 5% or 5% down. And those become funds available for that gap.
Okay.
And it's still a credit on the purchase.
Yes. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and what surprised me though, the biggest part of that surprised me is, so how is it that the interest rate got lower with a 3% over 5? I would have naturally thought that the interest rate would be higher. So it's just kind of fascinating. So I'm going to send that to you so
Yeah.
you guys can look
Okay.
at that.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody have anything else? Okay, what I'd like to do is I will send the summary. I'm going to send some attachments and list of resources. And next time I want to talk about what we can put together for our sellers. So unless you have more on buyers that you want to cover, but that's my goal for March 22nd. That sound
Sounds
good
good.
to you?
Sounds good.
Okay, that's what we'll do. And
Okay.
then if you have any questions after looking at that summary and looking at some of those resources, let us know and we'll try to follow up for you. I'll also have, like, when it's Rainier Title, Alex Bailey, I'll have his contact information. So any of these people that are providing some of these resources for you, you can contact them directly and you'll get the materials at no cost. Just pick them up. Okay?
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, and then one of our own is a photographer, so I'm gonna see if he can't come on and talk about his photography and what he can do for your sellers in a listing agreement.
Chuck.
Okay, thank you. Good to see
Okay,
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.